So you've shared some really fascinating source material with us for this one.
Absolutely. Looks like excerpts from a pretty complex book.
Yeah, and our job, like always, is to jump in, be your guides, and pull out the key insights.
Find those connections, the important bits, basically help you make sense of it all.
Exactly. Think of us navigating these ideas with you. You gave us the map, we highlight the landmarks.
Sounds good.
So today's material, these excerpts, the author is described as, well, erudite. Smart, but not stuffy.
Right, more enthusiastic it seems, able to connect things you wouldn't normally connect.
Yeah, like evolution, brain science, religious stories, weaving them together.
Seeing those underlying patterns across different fields, that's pretty interesting, not just staying in one lane.
That's what grabs you. So our mission, unpack these specific excerpts, find what's most relevant for you. Ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the foundation first. It seems to build on earlier work, maps of meaning.
Right, and the core idea, it looks like, is this universal human thing, how we deal with the unknown.
How we move from chaos to order, essentially.
Precisely. And it uses these powerful ancient symbols right away. Chaos and order.
Like the Taoist yin and yang.
Mm-hmm. The black chaos with the spot of white order. The white order with the spot of black chaos. That balance.
And it links that to Genesis 1, too, calling order out of, like, the formless void.
Exactly. So chaos isn't just mess. It's defined more deeply.
How so?
The text calls it formless potential. Everything outside what you know or control, the unknown.
And also, dreadful freedom. That sounds intense.
Yeah, it's where anything could happen, but nothing's defined yet. It's pure potential, maybe even overwhelming potential.
And order, then, is the opposite.
Right. Explore territory, structure, social hierarchy, biological patterns, tradition, predictability. It's the known world.
But reality isn't just static, is it? The author talks about layers of change.
Yes, that's a key point. Like, leaves change fast, the tree changes slower, the forest even slower, weather versus climate.
Okay, so change happens at different speeds.
And here's a fascinating bit. The text suggests the most real order, the most fundamental, might be the slowest changing, the least visible.
Like what?
Things like dominance hierarchies. The material notes they've been around for, well, maybe 350 million years. Ancient structures.
Wow. So the deepest order is almost unseen, operating over huge timescales. How does this connect to meaning then? Chaos, order, meaning.
Well, the source suggests meaning isn't found just in order, like rigid safety, or just in chaos dissolving into nothing.
It's somewhere else.
It's on the edge, the dynamic boundary between them, exploring the unknown from a stable base.
So managing that relationship, not eliminating either one.
Exactly. And this balance, this process is presented as well as living properly.
What do you mean?
Being stable, but also exploring, transforming things, repairing, cooperating. The text argues this actually justifies life.
Justifies life even with all the suffering.
Yes, and it helps us tolerate self-consciousness, knowing our limits, our mortality.
Without falling into despair or blaming everything.
Right, without resorting to victimhood or needing some kind of totalitarian certainty to feel safe from the unknown. It's positioned as the way to avoid creating, well, hells, like in the 20th century.
Okay, that's a big framework. Let's shift to the social world, how we interact with others. Shared beliefs come up.
Yes, hugely important. Shared beliefs, even simple ones, create mutual predictability. You know what to expect, roughly.
Which allows for cooperation and even competition that isn't just, well, destructive.
Exactly. It's fundamental for social organization, keeping things somewhat stable.
The source mentions competition in nature too, right? Birds, lobsters.
It does. The lobster example is quite vivid. They fight, and the loser, well, it affects them deeply.
How so?
They can lose confidence, physically slumps, and the text even notes their brain chemistry, their actual brain structure, can change to reflect that subordinate status.
Seriously, a biological change from losing a fight.
Apparently so. It's used as a stark metaphor for the psychological impact of hierarchy and defeat.
That really paints a picture. And this connects to inequality, doesn't it? The text mentions Price's Law, or the Matthew Principle.
Right. To those who have everything, more will be given. It's presented not just about money, but as a widespread pattern.
In what way?
Like, A small number of scientists write most papers,
Yeah.
a few cities get most people, a few words get used most often. It's this unequal distribution.
And the source is clear. Being at the bottom of these hierarchies is bad.
Profoundly difficult, yes. The text goes into the physical toll.
What is it?
Chronic stress, constantly burning energy, more impulsive behavior, suppressed immune system. It uses that image
Which one?
of the brain having the gas and brake pedals both punched to the mat, just constant emergency mode.
Makes long-term thinking hard, I imagine.
Incredibly hard. Pushes you towards immediate gratification, maybe even self-destructive stuff.
Okay. The text also talks about aggression, bullying. It makes a point about why people get bullied.
Yeah, it suggests sometimes people are targeted precisely because they don't fight back. Maybe they're compassionate, but also high in negative emotion, less likely to assert themselves forcefully.
And aggression itself.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Definitely. It can be cruel, obviously. But the source notes it's also the capacity needed to push back against oppression, to speak truth, even when it's unwelcome.
That leads to another tough point. Realizing your own capacity for that darkness.
Yes. The shock of discovering your own potential for aggression, maybe even tyranny, rather than just seeing perpetrators as completely other.
Like the PTSD example with soldiers.
Exactly. Traumatized not just by what happened to them, but by what they found they were capable of. Acknowledging that potential in all of us.
And there's subtle social things too, like posture.
Right, like the lobsters sizing each other up. Slumped posture can signal defeat, invite negative treatment, which reinforces the feeling. It's a feedback loop.
The source also briefly mentions family structures, bringing in some data.
It does. It presents data suggesting higher risks. Poverty, substance abuse, suicide for kids in single-parent homes, specifically mentioning father-absent homes compared to intact biological families.
That's sensitive territory.
Very. The author clarifies it's not about blame, especially for single mothers showing courage, but about acknowledging the data on outcomes related to different family setups presented in the source.
Got it. Okay, moving on to a really central theme, truth and lies. Personal responsibility. There's this concept of the life lie.
Yes. The text defines it as sort of trying to manipulate reality to force a specific outcome you want.
Based on what?
On arrogance, basically. Two premises. One, that you know enough right now to control the future perfectly, and two, that reality as it is just too unbearable to face.
And when reality inevitably pushes back against this lie.
That's when the voice of inauthenticity kicks in, according to the source.
Which sounds like
Blame. Did I get what I wanted? No. Therefore, the world is flawed. It's someone else's fault. And from there, it's a short step to wanting to obstruct or even destroy whatever is perceived as being in the way.
And the source stresses that lying. It's a conscious choice.
It emphasizes that you know you're doing it when you do it, even if you forget later. And the consequence, ignored reality doesn't vanish.
It grows.
Yes, it becomes this monster of the unknown in the dark, and it will emerge eventually, bringing chaos and suffering.
So the alternative, tell the truth. Or at least, don't lie.
Presented as incredibly powerful, courageous, truthful words are framed as the tools that make reality manageable, habitable even.
That phrase, don't hide baby monsters.
Powerful, isn't it? Face the small problems, the things you're ignoring now, because they only get bigger and uglier if you leave them hidden.
And this applies inwardly too, aiming with eyes wide open.
Exactly. Admitting your aim might be wrong, that you might be the problem because of your own ignorance or flaws.
Make friends with what you don't know.
Yes, and crucially, deal with your own issues. Remove the beam in your own eye before criticizing the world or others. This strengthens you and helps society.
The text also contrasts real listening with, dominance hierarchy maneuvers?
Yeah, basically conversations that aren't about understanding, but about scoring points, establishing status.
And if a conversation feels boring?
The blunt take is, it probably means you aren't really listening.
Ouch. Okay, there's also this idea about outsourcing our sanity.
Right, how much we rely on others' reactions to gauge if we're acting okay. Social feedback helps us calibrate.
But then there's a really challenging bit about helping people.
This one pushes back against maybe simpler notions of help.
What's the argument?
That trying to pull someone up who is, say, actively making things worse or isn't willing to accept help constructively, well, it can pull you down too.
So choosing friends isn't just about unconditional support.
The source frames it as reciprocal. It suggests you aren't obligated to keep supporting people who are actively choosing destructive paths, making the world worse. It's a tough line.
Definitely challenging. And this links to resentment. which the source sees as important.
Very important. It's called a revelatory emotion, part of an evil triad: arrogance, deceit, resentment. But it signals something important.
What does it signal?
One of two things, apparently. Either you're being immature, need to stop whining, take responsibility, and act, or you're genuinely facing tyranny or oppression.
And if it's tyranny?
Then you have a moral obligation to speak up. Staying silent in the face of real oppression is presented as worse than the risk of speaking out.
Wow. Okay, so all this leads back to suffering, the fundamental reality of it.
Yeah, the source really emphasizes this. Suffering is presented as irreducible, unavoidable, something that matters, quote, more than matter matters.
And because it's unavoidable, aiming for just happiness is maybe misguided.
The suggestion is that meaning is a deeper, more robust aim. Meaning found through developing character and facing suffering.
So striving for the improvement of being, with capital letters.
Exactly. Acting as if being itself, existence, might be justifiable, might be good, if you strive to act properly within it.
This sounds like an act of faith.
It's presented that way, existential faith. Not belief in falsehoods, but a commitment to the potential for good in existence, despite all the tragedy and irrationality. It's the necessary stance against nihilism and resentment.
Practically speaking, how does one even begin to do that?
There's a concrete suggestion. Ask yourself daily, what could I do that I would do to make life a little better?
Small steps. Aiming high, but practically.
Yeah, avoiding those grand, potentially totalitarian, utopian plans. Starting small, starting with what you would actually do.
The source also brings in sacrifice. How does that fit?
It looks at sacrifice historically, even evolutionarily. It's about delayed gratification, giving up something valuable now for a better future. It's fundamental to work, planning, building anything.
And this leads to the idea of ultimate sacrifice, using religious archetypes.
Yes, the Christ story is used as the archetype. Giving everything, your whole self, for the sake of the highest good, for the advancement of being.
Though there's also a critique in there about some forms of Christianity.
Right, a critique of passive or overly dogmatic approaches that might devalue this life, or let people avoid personal moral responsibility by just relying on dogma.
And what about the death of God idea, losing that shared ultimate value?
The text argues this creates a vacuum, leads to nihilism, makes societies vulnerable to dangerous ideologies, utopian, totalitarian ones. It mentions Dostoevsky, Nietzsche predicting the horrors of the 20th century stemming from this loss.
There's a Jungian idea mentioned too, about hierarchies.
Yeah, Jung's point that everyone has a hierarchy of values. Whatever is at the very top functions as your God.
And this God isn't just believed in.
It's acted out. Your behavior reveals what you truly value most, manifesting through archetypes like, say, Christ or Satan.
The text also argues for limitations, using examples like Julian, Superman.
Right. A hero without limits isn't compelling. There's no story, no growth. Being involves becoming, and becoming needs constraints, like a child needing boundaries or Superman needing vulnerability to be interesting.
And then the toughest challenge, innocent suffering. The author's daughter, Ivan Karamazov.
Yeah, this is framed as the ultimate question. How could a good God permit that, especially the suffering of the innocent? Referencing Ivan Karamazov's rejection of a heaven built on a child's tears.
It's a profound challenge to faith, to meaning.
Absolutely. And the text notes that confronting this level of despair can lead to horrifying conclusions, like the idea that maybe being itself is fundamentally flawed, better off not existing. How that despair could terrifyingly make even monstrous acts seem understandable, though never justifiable from that broken perspective.
Wow, that is incredibly heavy. So after exploring all of that chaos, order, lies, suffering, meaning, what's the proposed way forward?
It keeps coming back again and again to personal responsibility.
Start with yourself.
Yes. Order your own experience first. Clean up your own household before you try to fix the world. That quote. If you cannot bring peace to your household, how dare you try to rule a city?
And if you fail to take responsibility, fail to face truth, make sacrifices.
The text says it weakens you, corrupts the soul, leads to failure and stupid suffering, the kind you could have avoided, the kind you brought on yourself through lies or inaction.
That line. Nothing is going so badly that it can't be made worse.
Chilling, isn't it? And suffering terribly while knowing it's your own fault. That's presented as basically hell.
So the sacrifice isn't just giving things up, it's giving up beliefs that aren't working.
Exactly. Being willing to let go of your cherished ideas, your current convictions, when reality shows you they're wrong. That painful sacrifice is what allows a better future to emerge.
There's a Taoist idea mentioned too.
Yes, mastering yourself instead of trying to force others. And being grateful for your starting point, wherever it is, as the place to build from.
And practically, keep promises to yourself. Reward small actions.
Right? Build self-trust. Do what you say you'll do, even tiny things. Reward yourself. It builds the integrity needed for bigger things. So ultimately, the path suggested in these excerpts is about aligning yourself with truth, aiming at the highest good you can conceive.
Taking action.
Yes, working to create habitable order, bring beauty, confront evil, reduce suffering where you can, and always, always work on bettering yourself.
Wow. Quite a journey we've taken through this material. From chaos and order symbols, through lobster brains and social hierarchies, wrestling with truth, lies, immense suffering.
And landing on these profound questions of meaning, faith, and ultimately personal responsibility, it really ties together a lot. Psychology, biology, myth, history.
Yeah, it offers a whole framework, really. And if I had to boil down a central takeaway from our dive today, it feels like life is chaotic, it is full of suffering, and we often make it worse with our own deceit.
Seems fair.
But meaning isn't found by running away, it's found by facing it. Taking responsibility, telling the truth, accepting limits, aiming high, starting right here with yourself.
It's definitely not promising an easy path. No quick fixes for happiness, but it offers a demanding but potentially meaningful way to navigate it all.
And engaging with these kinds of ideas, it's not really a one-off, is it? It feels like a continuous process, a constant deep dive.
Absolutely. Requires ongoing attention, ongoing effort.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, based on our dive today. Considering everything we've touched on, chaos, order, suffering, truth, responsibility, can you maybe identify just one small baby monster?
One thing you've been ignoring.
Yeah, one ignored reality, maybe a necessary sacrifice you've been avoiding, or just one uncomfortable truth about yourself or your life that you've been hiding. And perhaps find the courage to face just that one thing with truth today.
A challenging thought to end on.